2019 to 2020 academic year will always be special to me because this was the year that I chose to do study abroad. Originally, I had planned to do the full year in Spain, but eventually I decided I wanted to spend my spring semester in France. It was a scary decision for me because while I had other people from my university with me in Spain, I would be the only one at the program in France. Additionally, I didn't speak any French and would be living alone for the first time. However, I decided to swallow my fear and embark on a new adventure. Unfortunately, that adventure, while very rewarding, was cut short due to the COVID-19 crisis. This is the story of how my study abroad program was canceled, and my next video will cover the chaotic travel home. When our story begins, I had been in Menton for 2 months, and I was having a great time. I was adjusting to living in a country where I didn't know the language, I had found friends and tons of interesting people, I had gotten to travel, and my French and Arabic classes were truly starting to pay off.
Bonjour monsieur, madame, je m'appelle Asata et je vais parler de Menton.
بيلقاني والمزرعة والخطبة رنانة والحتى البرجانة الموسيقية.
Okay, that isn't the point of this video, but my point is I was really starting to feel like I was settling into my study abroad experience. Things were starting to make sense, and I was very excited about that. Just like thousands of other study abroad students, I wasn't ready to leave. For context to this story, there are a few key dates to keep track of. The first is our spring break, which was February 17th through the 23rd, and because of that timing for spring break, a lot of students at our university passed through Italy, and when they came back to campus, they were all at risk for being exposed to the coronavirus. At the time, I don't think we were too worried. There was a lot of confusion and frustration and back and forth about which students should or shouldn't come to class and how long they should stay away. Classes would be canceled one day and then reinstated the next, and it was stressful for both the administration and the students. Finally, President Macron decided to close all schools in France, and everything would have to be moved online. Another important date to keep in mind before we continue is March 3rd. This was the day Rutgers, my home university, announced that they were canceling all study abroad programs. However, they said if I really wanted to stay in France, I could sign a waiver. So I signed it and decided as long as classes were still available, even online, I was going to stick it out in France. So it was official. School was shutting down for the rest of the year. Sciences Po was taking the crisis very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that they invited all 300 students to gather together in the school's small courtyard one last time with music, food, and copious amounts of alcohol. What could possibly go wrong? So the party was a ton of fun. Everyone kind of got a chance to say goodbye to each other. And then finally, we all decided it's a nice day out. Why not go to the beach and keep it going? So we all headed down to the beach to continue the celebration / farewell party.
Every time you hear my voice and I'm singing to you, you don't feel shy, baby. Don't know if it's the voice or the love or your choice on above. Every time I drive you crazy. I drive you crazy. Noize.
So I'm a little sick. I'm okay. Just have a cold, I think, and a cough.
Sore throat, wet cough, pink eye, headache, and I guess a bit of fatigue, but that was only the first day or two. The first day that my sickness really hit me, I just knocked out for the entire day. On the second day, I knew I had to tell my parents, and I felt really bad because I didn't want to worry them. But once we talked, they were like, yeah, it's time for you to come home. This was the start of a very stressful period of us worrying about how long I should wait before returning to the United States. Trump had just announced that he was closing the border to the US to non-citizens, and we didn't know how much time we had before American citizens could be restricted as well. At the same time, there was no way I was going to be able to show up to the airport coughing, so I decided to book a flight 2 weeks from that day. It was a very real fear in my family that the border would be closed before I was well enough to travel, but fortunately, that didn't end up being the case. Also, shout out to all the other exchange students that helped me with groceries and medical supplies while I couldn't leave my house. You guys were great. I'm okay. I just don't have my voice. That's it. And now, boys and girls, it's time for a short lesson in shrinkage because I was too sick to do my hair.
I have now been sick for 4 days. And it's
Throughout this whole process, I really didn't leave my apartment at all. I stayed isolated for a full 10 days, and then the only reason I left after that was to go see a doctor to confirm whether or not it'd be safe for me to fly and hopefully find out if what I had was coronavirus. I never thought that it was, just because I had a wet cough instead of a dry cough, and I never really had a fever or anything. But just to be safe, I was like, well, I might as well try to get tested before I travel internationally. And especially since I have people in my household that are at risk, at extra risk for catching it, I definitely wanted to make sure that everything would be okay before I traveled home. So I knew I had to go see a doctor. I was super apprehensive about it because I still really didn't speak very much French, but I called my French school and I was like, okay, I have to see a doctor. I'm not feeling well. And so they gave me 2 doctors that they recommended. The whole way walking there, I was super nervous because at the time, France had put out a rule that if you wanted to leave your house, you had to have a form. And I didn't have a printer in my apartment, obviously, and I couldn't leave my apartment. So I didn't have the form, but I just kind of copied down in my notebook what the form should be and signed it. And I just hoped that the police wouldn't stop me because A, I don't speak enough French, and then 2, I just didn't have the access to get a real form. But I made it to the doctors with no problems. Nobody stopped me. The streets were empty. Anyone that was out was keeping their distance completely. And then I made it to the doctors, and they seemed very relaxed. Everyone was just very nice. The nurse had her mask off when I came in, but since I had a scarf around my face, she saw me and she was like, ah, and she put her mask back on. And then they took my temperature with the temperature gun, and then they just let me sit down. And I waited maybe 10 minutes, and then the doctor came and got me, and I sat down. He's like, well, mademoiselle, what seems to be the problem? And I was like, well, I have a wet cough. And he's like,
it's coronavirus.
And I was like, I also have pink eye. I don't have a fever. He's like, it's coronavirus. All these young people, you all have mild symptoms. And I was like, well, could I have a test or something? And he's like, there are no tests. We don't have any tests. So I was like, okay. I'm supposed to go back to America on the 30th. Is that going to be okay? Or do I need to cancel my flight? And he was like, well, how long have you been sick? And I was like, I haven't left my apartment in the last 10 days because as soon as I started to feel sick, I isolated myself from everyone else. And he was like, oh, 10 days? Oh, you're fine. The 30th? That's when your flight is? That's totally great because you can only spread coronavirus for 7 days. So you're going to be totally fine to fly. Everything is great. Yeah, just go back to the United States. And he literally saw me for maybe 2 to 5 minutes. But he was just convinced. Yeah, at that point I felt better because I was like, well, great. Then I don't have to worry about catching it in the airport since he's saying I already have it. Obviously, I was still going to take a lot of precautions just in case he was wrong. But it did make me feel better that I wasn't going to risk passing it to anyone. Because if I felt that way, I definitely would not have traveled. But yeah, so I felt better. Rutgers had promised me that when I was ready to return home, they would cover my flight directly if I booked through their chosen travel agency, which was SDA Travel. But in order to do so, I would have to call directly. I tried several times, but due to the chaos of COVID-19, I was never able to get in touch with a human being. The machine just kept saying they were only accepting calls dealing with the flights within the next 72 hours, and if that wasn't my situation, I needed to hang up and free the line for somebody else. So finally, I decided to pay out of pocket for the flight and have Rutgers reimburse me later. I was booked to fly from Nice to London, from London to Chicago, and from Chicago to Atlanta. Next, I called my landlord. Well, my landlord's mom. And I let her know that unfortunately I would not be finishing out my lease and would be gone before April. They were super nice about everything and agreed to return my security deposit once someone got a chance to look at the apartment and confirm everything was in order. I gifted my doomsday hoard of groceries and supplies off to my friends that were staying in Monton and began to pack. So while I was finalizing my travel plans, I also kept busy by learning some TikTok dances, crocheting the shirt I'm wearing in this video, cooking some stuff, talking to friends and family, and watching Hunter x Hunter. Before I knew it, it was my last day in Monton. A friend of my landlord's parents was coming to pick up the keys to the apartment the next morning, so I knew I had one last opportunity to walk around the town that had quickly become home. Since my trash disposal spot was right next to the beach, it gave me the perfect chance to get to see the beach one last time.